fine.
I don't.
All right. The morning session will remain open, and I will now call the December 2nd, 2009 special Joint City Council Redevelopment Agency meeting to order. This meeting has been properly noticed and posted in compliance with the open meeting law. We will now hear all discussion and comments on Council Item Number 50, Bill Number 2009-50, and items number 3 through 8 on the special joint meeting at the same time. Mr. Jerbick, would you please read Bill Number 2009-50 for the record?
I'll be happy to, Your Honor. Bill number 2009-50, an ordinance designated by the short title 2009 City Hall Lease Purchase Agreement Ordinance authorizing the execution and delivery of a lease purchase agreement and related agreements and effect the financing of a new City Hall, making certain findings in connection therewith, ratifying action previously taken pertaining to the foregoing by the City and its officers and employees, and providing other matters relating thereto.
All right, Mr. Steed, I understand that you have an amendment. Where's Mr. Steed?
That's a good question. I think he's on his way down, Your Honor.
Well, let him hurry. In the meantime, Councilman Ross, I believe you have a disclosure.
I do, Your Honor. Thank you very much. On Agenda Item 50, this item directly relates to the development of the new City Hall. As Secretary-Treasurer of the Southern Nevada Building and Construction Trades Council, the building trades is currently in negotiations with Forest City to secure union jobs for union members on that project. For that reason, I am disclosing and abstaining from voting on Agenda Item 50.
Mr. Steed? Very good. I understand you have an amendment to the bill, Mr. Steed?
Yes. On page 4 in Section 8, I believe there's reference to the bill having gone to recommending committee meeting, and a similar reference on page 11 in the affidavit of the clerk. This bill was passed directly from its introduction last meeting to consideration today without going to recommending committee meeting, so we would remove that language in a First Amendment, also indicating that because it didn't go to recommending committee, there has been no public hearing on the bill, so it would be appropriate to hear that, to take public comment today, which you probably intended to do anyway.
That's correct. All right, thank you very much. At this time, I'm going to read the items in for the record. Number 3 is R83-2009, discussion and possible action regarding a City of Las Vegas resolution consenting to the undertakings of the City of Las Vegas Redevelopment Agency, the RDA, regarding the owner participation agreement between the RDA and LiveWork LLC, FC Vegas 20 LLC, and FC Vegas 39 LLC for the future development of the Block Project, a mixed-use office and retail complex of buildings on a 5-block assemblage between Lewis and Garces Avenues and Main Street and Casino Center Boulevard in Ward 3. This item is related to Item 4. Item 4 is RA 19-2009, discussion and possible action regarding a redevelopment agency resolution finding that the project known as the Block Project, subject to an owner participation agreement between the City of Las Vegas Redevelopment Agency, the RDA, and LiveWork LLC, FC Vegas 20 LLC, and FC Vegas 39 LLC, located on a 5-block assemblage between Lewis and Garces Avenues and Main Street and Casino Center Boulevard, is in compliance with and in furtherance of the goals and objectives of the redevelopment plan, and authorizing the chairman of the RDA to execute the agreement. Ward 3, and this is related to Item 3, R83-2009. Number 5 is discussion and possible action regarding a City of Las Vegas interlocal agreement between the City of Las Vegas Redevelopment Agency, the RDA, and the City of Las Vegas, Nevada, as it relates to the RDA's intent to pay a portion of the debt on the new City Hall if and when those funds are available, pertaining to wards 1, 3, and 5, and this item is related to Item Number 6. Number 6 is discussion and possible action regarding a redevelopment agency interlocal agreement between the City of Las Vegas Redevelopment Agency, the RDA, and the City of Las Vegas, Nevada, as it relates to the RDA's intent to pay a portion of the debt on the new City Hall if and when those funds are available, wards 1, 3, and 5, and this item is related to Item Number 5. Number 7 is R84-2009, discussion and possible action regarding a City of Las Vegas resolution finding that the proposed real estate exchange by and between City Parkway Roman numeral 4A, Inc., and PQ Las Vegas, LLC, for a parcel located in the area bounded by Main Street, First Street, Lewis Avenue, and Clark Avenue for the parcel known as PQ in Symphony Park is in the best interest of the public. That pertains to Ward 3 and 5, and that item is related to item number 8. Number 8 is R85, 2009, discussion and possible action on a City of Las Vegas resolution regarding the execution and delivery of the Joint Approval Certificate, Exchange and Parcel PQ Development Agreement, and related agreements concerning the City Hall project and Parcel PQ project, approving the execution and delivery of related agreements and documents by City Parkway 4A, Inc., City Parkway 5, Inc., and Office District Park 1, Inc., ratifying actions previously taken and pertaining to the foregoing by the city, its officers and employees, and providing for other matters related thereto, and this pertains to Ward 3 and 5, and that item is related to item number 7, which is R84-2009. We will now take, do you want to take public comment now or a presentation?
I think we're going to move to their presentation.
Very good. What I'd like to do now is I'd like to hear from city staff as to your position concerning the aforementioned items, and we'll start off with Mr. Vincent.
Before you do, Your Honor,
Yes.
again.
You have to do it again?
On agenda items 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 of the agenda of this special meeting directly relate to the development of the new City Hall. Again, as Secretary-Treasurer of the Southern Nevada Building Construction Trades Council, building trades are currently in negotiations with Forest City to secure union jobs for union members on this project. For that reason, Your Honor, I am disclosing and abstaining from voting on all of these items.
All right. Thank you very much, Councilor Ross. All right. Mr. Vincent.
Thank you, Your Honor. For the record, Mark Vincent, Director of Finance and Business Services. We have a presentation today. Bill's going to start it off, and I'll be in the middle, and Scott will clean it up for us. But this whole presentation, this whole deal today, was contingent upon our ability to sell the certificates of participation bonds. And so I'm here before you today to tell you we had a very successful sale this morning. Remarkably, we were oversubscribed by 53%, so there was a lot of interest, apparently. Certainly the Build America Bonds portion of this is a big reason for that. So let me just let you know that, and we'll cover this in the presentation, but we did have a successful sale. The all-in true interest cost was about 5.26, about 3 basis points higher than what we thought it might be a few days ago. Still certainly within the realm of a great deal. So we're essentially paying what is almost like GO rates on a certificate of participation lease purchase deal. So we think that's a big deal. Before Bill starts, let me just...
That is a big deal. I also want to state, I believe the response which we received on the sale of these bonds is extraordinary in the economic framework that we face today. I think it's a real bright spot as far as the way people think about Las Vegas, Nevada, that we are a place that they have security in which to invest. And the bottom line really is we were looking to sell $175 million worth of these bonds on these projects, and we had offers to buy $267 million worth of bond, and that's a feather in this community's cap. Go ahead, Mr. Rich.
Just to tie into that, obviously there is a lot of investment folks out there that are still bullish in Las Vegas despite us being in the throes of our recession. Just for the record, this is the COPS Notes Certificate Purchase Agreement, the final lease purchase agreement, and indenture of trust, and I'll give these to the clerk, and then we'll let Bill proceed.
Very good. We'll make that part of the record, Ms. Bridges.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
could I ask Mark just to put on the record, I know we are where we are in standing with those who evaluate our ability to repay, and where we are in comparison to the other local entities as far as minding our money business well.
Sure, be happy to. We are our GO, our basic GO rate is AA. Across the board, which is fairly high. It's fairly high in investment rate.
For those watching, could you just explain GO?
General obligation bonds are the cheapest bonds you can sell. They're bonds that you would sell pledging the full faith and credit of the city. In those circumstances, full faith and credit means that the city would use whatever means possible to pay those bonds back, including could be forced to raise property tax rates in order to pay those bonds back. What we sold this morning were certificates of participation. with a non-appropriation clause in them. We cannot be forced by the bondholders to raise property tax rates to pay those bonds, and the bonds are subject to a non-appropriation clause. If we were to be in another double-dip recession or a Great Depression, and we were close to bankruptcy and we needed to walk away from that lease, we legally could do so, but that is certainly not our intent, and we will be treating these bonds as if they are obviously obligations of the City of Las Vegas, which is they are, and we'll account for them in that fashion. But when you compare our credit rating to other local governments in Nevada, we have the highest. There's at least one other city that has a similar rating, but we have the highest rating of the city governments in Nevada.
But we also rank very well as far as our percentage of use of the monies.
Yes, when you look at our debt per capita or our debt as a percent of assessed value, we are the lowest in both categories. With this new issue, I apologize, I haven't had time to recalculate that, but we'll be still be the lowest or maybe the second to lowest in the state of Nevada. So we have a lot of debt capacity, and certainly the investors and the bond raters recognize that. So that's part of the reason why I'm sure that was a contributor to the successful sale this morning.
I knew that information, but I wanted you to repeat it for the audience that's here, also for those who are watching, because I think it shows that certainly over a period of time, your office, the city council members, whoever were there at the time or who are here now, have really tried to follow the best we can financially, and to rank that highly per capita throughout the whole entire state, I think is an excellent accolade for you.
Well, I think it's a reflection on the council, the mayor and council. Obviously, you set the policies, and you've been the ones that have been willing to make the hard decisions. We just tee them up for you.
Okay, well, I appreciate the councilwoman's observations. What I would like to see happen is to have the presentation, and then if the council members have any questions or comments at that time, I think it would be appropriate, because we do have a time limitation here. By 1 o'clock, the bond market closes in New York City, and we have to take action if, in fact, this project is going to be approved by that time. So I'm going to try to move it along the best I know how. I don't want to be rude to anybody, but we have to move this along because of the realities of life. So, Mr. Vincent, why don't you, are you through?
You
did a great job. Mr. Aaron.
I'll be back.
Tell me you're going to be fast today.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. For the record, Bill Arntz, Director, Office of Business Development. I'm going to be very brief and outline a project summary, going over a development update, a budget recap, and an overview of the entire transaction. Mark will come back and explain the financial option which we selected for the project, which is the COPS, and show you the actual payments, the lease payments that are required for the project for City Hall. And then Chief Urban Redevelopment Officer Scott Adams is going to finish talking about risk analysis, the economic impact of the project, and then recap the council items which you're considering today. As far as development update, just to update you, our building plans for City Hall have been approved by the reviewing agencies within the city, as well as the utilities. So it essentially is permit ready. So subject to your vote today, the project is ready to proceed. We do expect to close on the financing, if you vote approval today, in a matter of about 2 weeks. And so we could actually be under construction at the beginning of next year. You may recall that we're handling the garage for the City Hall separately, where we're going to be financing that using a medium-term obligation that's already been sold. The design process is well underway and near completion. And so that project, the construction of the garage, will mirror the construction of the City Hall and be ready for the opening of the new City Hall project. We've also secured a guaranteed maximum price. Forest City and Live Work, our developer, has worked very aggressively with Whiting Turner on making sure we get the most bang for the buck that we can, and we do have a guaranteed maximum price, which ensures that the project will be built on time and on budget. I want to spend a minute just recapping our project costs, the sources of funds, and then the total project cost for the project. At the top of this slide, you see several line items. Those are the sources of funds for the project. There's certificate of participation, what was sold this morning. will yield proceeds for the project in the amount of $137 million. There are some internal service funds and grants from the city in the amount of $6 million. We had remaining project funds because the first phase of infrastructure work at Symphony Park came in under budget, and we allocated $5.1 million from that project for this project. We had a capital fund balance in the city of $4 million, and then some general funds of $5 million. You see that being a total sources of funds of $157,100,000. That sources of funds is against the total project cost. You directed staff to try to keep the total budget under $150 million, and we've succeeded in that. The total project cost of $146,248,000 is less than the sources of funds, and so we actually have a budget savings, or in other words, a surplus of the amount of funds that we have available of $10.8 million. We're recommending that we hold that as an owner-directed contingency, but in the event that we stay on target with the project, those remaining funds identified on the slide as budget savings could be returned back to the funding source. Again, to mention the hard construction contract with Whiting Turner, that's coming in at roughly about $98 million, and then the overall hard construction costs of about $105.6 million. So that hard construction cost of $105.6 million is a component of the $146 million. The rest is going to design, engineering, utility relocation, but we've really gotten a really good partnership with Forest City and with Whiting Turner, and I'd like to thank both of them for their effort on working on our behalf to keep the project at a reasonable cost. Finally, I'm going to just go over a transaction overview. You've seen this slide before, or a version of it. Really, the transaction stayed the same with one exception, and I'll touch on that. We have a master development agreement, which the City Council approved back in November of 2008, and it was amended, in May of 2008, and then was amended in November of 2008, May of 2009, and most recently November of 2009. That really was the framework agreement which sets in motion the other four agreements for the project. The City Hall Development Agreement, which is our agreement with Forest City to build the City Hall on our behalf. The importance of that, they're taking on the risk as developer to deliver it on time and on budget, and it includes a completion guarantee, not only from Whiting Turner, but also from Forest City and their parent company. The lease purchase agreement, Mark's going to talk about, that's the financing. As he mentioned, it does include an annual appropriations clause. The exchange and PQ development agreement basically enables us to take ownership of the land for the new project, the new City Hall project, without a cash outlay. We're using our equity that we earned in Symphony Park by exchanging sites, exchanging parcel PQ in Symphony Park for the land underneath City Hall, the new City Hall. And then we actually have a covenant on PQ to get additional development performance from the developer in excess of $7 million, and also to develop the hotel casino project in Symphony Park. And then finally, we have an owner participation agreement, or in other words, a TIF rebate agreement, similar to our other agreements, where we've negotiated a rebate for the private office and retail project proposed by Forest City on land that they owned. It sets a schedule for that development, and really the significance of this is there's no upfront cash investment from the city on the private development. The private development and private equity and debt are paying for that private development. The one new wrinkle, the interlocal between the redevelopment agency and the city, which is one item that you're voting on today, is a mechanism for the redevelopment agency to pledge future tax increment revenue for repayment of the COPS, or the lease or the debt payment. It doesn't obligate the RDA or the city to a specific amount, but it does enable the City Council, acting as Board of Directors for the redevelopment agency, to prioritize the City Hall as a priority project for spending redevelopment agency revenue, future revenue, for repayment of part of the lease payment. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to Mark, who's going to recap the COPS and then talk about the financing that we were able to achieve today.
All right, Mr. Vincent.
Thank you, Bill. When we started this process over a year ago, it seems like, we had the worst-case scenario, which we sought approval for from the Debt Management Commission as well as the State Department of Taxation, and that was the upper limit. That would have been sort of the worst-case scenario. That assumed interest rates of 7.5%. It assumed we were going to capitalize interest for a 7-year period. That's the approval process that said we could issue up to $267 million of debt. That's not what we're doing today. Today we're contemplating issuing $185 million worth of debt. So you can see the worst-case scenario what we are today. GO revenue bonds, we talked about those as being the cheapest way of issuing a debt. At the time when we were putting this together, Build America bonds did not exist, and so we weren't contemplating Build America bonds, and I'll argue today that Build America bonds almost make the COPS notes as cheap as GO. But GO revenue bonds would have been the cheapest alternative. The issue with that, of course, as I mentioned earlier, as Councilwoman Tarkanian asked, general obligation bonds require the full faith and credit of the city. We would have been all in, if you will, and we would have not had any ability to deal with the lease in the event that we go into some sort of deep, dark depression. And that was an option that you did not give us at the time, but we threw that out as the best case benchmark. So we had the worst case and the best case. Along the way through this process, by the way, I should mention, and I didn't do it earlier because the mayor was moving me along, but this has not been an easy sale. This is not an easy transaction. It's very complicated. This has been, dare I say, one of the more difficult financings we've ever put together. We used a team of underwriters, and I want to mention them. We used Stoning Youngberg, who was the lead underwriter for us, Citigroup, and Siebert, Branford, and Shank, a minority underwriting firm. So we used a team of underwriters, and that was a key towards this. But there's been a lot of folks involved, a lot of attorneys, our bond counsel, our financial advisors. Not been an easy thing to do. Along the way, we weren't sure we were going to be able to sell the COPS notes. They're not always easy to sell when you have a non-appropriation clause on a certificate of participation. And so we started looking at potentially other financing, and a bank was brought to us, Natixis Bank, as a potential source. What they had proposed to us was sort of a variable rate. I say it's a quasi-variable rate fixed rate. The end result would be that our initial payments were going to be approaching the worst-case DMC approval level, with the potential that we would get a credit back at the end of the refinancing and be able to take some reserve money and buy down that debt. It was a process that would have worked. It had some advantages to it in the sense that we weren't going to need an underwriter, and it was more of a sure deal, but we felt financially it was a higher risk alternative, and it was not one we were recommending. And that brought us to here we are with the ERA Act, and all of a sudden having access to Build America bonds, and as I've already indicated, that almost produces a net interest rate that's very close to what you would get on a GO debt. And so this is the recommendation we're making today for you. And the third item there under the COPS, we had talked about potentially doing some supplemental funding somewhere down the road. In all the cases when we were talking about capitalizing interest for 7 years to get the payments 4 through 7 down to $2 million a year, that's an expensive proposition. Those are going to be taxable bonds we'd have to sell on top of these bonds we're talking about today, and we've run some scenarios since then. I've shared those with you already. That indicates that we really don't need to do that supplemental bond based on our current forecasting. And so while it's something that we may look at or may need to look at this point we don't think it's certainly not cost worthy for us to do that, and we don't think there's going to be need for that anyway, so I'll mention that. And of course the final alternative is and it remains, we can do nothing. We can wait and not sell these bonds and not move forward with the project. A couple corrections on the slide as of this morning. The COPS are 30-year term. COP stands for Certificates of Participation, and the BAB stands for Build America Bonds. The Build America Bonds, essentially what we're selling is taxable bonds, and so the interest that the bondholders get on these bonds will be taxable to the extent they pay their taxes. The federal government then rebates 35% back to us, and so we're taking that in as revenue to help us pay for the net, for the gross lease payment, so we'll have a net lease payment. The all-in true interest cost is not 5.23, it's 5.26. It's gone up about 3 basis points, but that's pretty negligible. The annual lease payment will average out to 13.6 million. The initial payment we'll have in 2013, which would be 3.5 million interest only net, and then there'll be 3 years in a row from 14, 15, and 16. Those fiscal years, the interest payment will be about 9.3 million, and then starting in fiscal year 17, it'll be 13.4, and it will vary as we move forward. So just want to get those corrections on the record. Again, with Build America bonds, it's a very low interest rate. Again, we don't have a general obligation pledge, which is not to say these aren't an obligation of the city. We'll treat it like a debt, but it's not a GO debt, which is the reason why it didn't get rated at, this credit was rated at AA minus, not AA. And the reason for that downgrade, one tick, is because this credit doesn't have the full faith and credit backing of the city. And the ERA credits actually come out to be 100.5 million in credit. So over the term, if we were to keep these bonds and not refinancing over the term, we will get $100.5 million in credits back from the U.S. Treasury as part of the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act for the Build America bonds tax credits. And the cons, we're past all that because at this point we've marketed the bonds, we've got our orders, and I've already talked about the issue of whether or not we would have to issue any supplemental revenue bonds. At this point, we don't think we would have to at all. And I think Bill already mentioned the fact that we have the RDA city interlocal agreement that addresses the issue of, to the extent that we have revenues, either TIF or land sale revenues available, those can, with your direction, be used towards the general fund to help pay for this lease.
Thank you very much. Mr. Adams?
Good morning. Scott Adams, Chief Urban Redevelopment Officer. I think what I'd like to do now is just bring out a few closing thoughts as you move forward and consider approval on this project. I think in some of the prior briefings, a number of questions have come up, and I wanted to address some of the issues that have been raised as we move forward from a standpoint of you're considering this from a risk analysis standpoint. First of all, and these are some points that we've made in the past, but I really want to bring them to a head today because I think they're important as you deliberate. One of the questions that was asked previously is, what is the worst case here? What would be the worst case scenario? And I think perhaps under that crystal ball, it might be if Forest City were to withdraw in the project. If that event were to happen, our documents have been constructed, and I want to give a lot of thanks to our entire legal team on this. We've been very, very well represented by our internal counsel, Terry Panicello, and the whole city attorney's office, as well as Nick Niarchos, our outside counsel, and many of our other attorneys who have helped create and craft some very, very tight documents. So one of the things that we've got is the contract between Forest City and Whiting and Turner is assignable to us. So if for some reason Forest City were to go away, we can step right in to the contract with Whiting and Turner using the proceeds of sale and continue to build City Hall as though Forest City weren't there. The other thing that was of great concern during our discussions and negotiations is, as you know, we're seeing great instability in land values. And so one of the things we did in the transaction was make the swap occur up front. Early on, it was going to occur downstream, and the concern we had was we wanted to guarantee that we get the equity out of parcel PQ against the acquisition of the new site for City Hall. So we're going into escrow if you approve this. We will go into escrow with the closing of the swap, and at the completion of City Hall, we exchange sites. That guarantees that we get our equity out of the parcel PQ against the City Hall site. It also guarantees we get that difference in value. I think we mentioned previously there's a $7 million difference in value that's in our favor that we have now in these documents placed as a covenant on parcel PQ that will guarantee we always get that. Now, our attorneys who have look at things that from a probability standpoint said in the extremely unlikely event we don't perfect that swap, we have long-term leases backing up the swap. We're exchanging 75-year leases. So we'll have those to back up the swap. And the other thing is that you hold control of parcel PQ. If, under that worst-case scenario, Forest City were to back out, the land gets sold to somebody else, that covenant that we're placing on parcel PQ controls the use of PQ, but you also act not just as a party to the transaction, but you're the city council and you approve land use control changes on property. So you have land use control of parcel PQ all the way through. And then finally, a point is that, and I think Mark alluded to this, we've structured the financing on this to give us anywhere from 4 to 7 years of a reasonable period to allow for an economic recovery before we start to realize the effect of full payments on this transaction. Some other points that I think you need to consider, and these are points we've made previously, and there's some new ones. The current
Excuse me,
cost,
Mr. Adams, that's 4 to 7 years after the City Hall is completed.
that's 4 to 7 years from the closing of COTS.
Right.
From the closing of COTS.
Okay.
Right. This month.
That's now.
Yes.
That's
right.
As soon as we close, because that's when we start our obligation against repayment. We're in this moment of time. It's incredible because, literally 3 or 4 months ago, we were very concerned there was going to be a feasible transaction here. We figured out with the underwriters how to use Build America bonds and have now completed a successful sale. And we have this moment in time where we have achieved a very, very low attractive interest rate. There is no guarantee what those interest rates will be if you wait and see on this. There is no guarantee what that future will bring. And there is also a one-time opportunity for the use of Build America bonds under the stimulus bill. Under the stimulus bill, they go away in December of next year. There's that window of time where a lot of things happened under the stimulus bill, and this is one of those things. Furthermore, we've been giving the pros and cons. There is the risk of pledging future general fund tax revenues. But we've been very transparent about that from the very beginning. But along with that, you have an RDA interlocal agreement that backstops that, such that as we continue to build momentum in the downtown redevelopment program, create new tax increment revenues, we're going to be able to see the redevelopment agency pick more and more of that lease payment and debt up. Now, we've recognized there is no guarantee that the TIF and land sale revenues that we've talked about all along will cover those payments. But I'll get to this in a minute. I think you'll see that the probability of success here of realizing some revenue towards that is very, very high. The other thing is proceeding keeps Forest City vested downtown. We have worked for years now to engage with investment-grade, high-quality partners in our redevelopment program downtown. Forest City is clearly one of those. They are still here, standing with us at our side in the midst of one of the worst, if not the worst, real estate recessions in American history. And they're still with us, moving forward with us on this transaction. Proceeding keeps them vested downtown and keeps them moving forward on their project. And then finally, if you delay, will that cause a redevelopment backslide? And let me use this diagram to kind of point some of that out and make some further points. We've done a lot over the last 5 to 10 years in realizing a dramatic change in our downtown and redevelopment. There's a lot of momentum going forward. This project is, I think it's almost a misnomer to call it a City Hall project. I was going to bring over the documents with me to the dais. I have a 6-inch binder of documents that you've all been given copies of. And you don't get that level of documentation in our transaction documents for just a city hall. The reason why it's such a complex transaction is there's actually 4 transactions. And we've been negotiating the development of a parcel PQ, the development of a new city hall, the development of a block project, and then more recently we've been looking at what happens to the old city hall site behind us. So let me walk through this map that I've got up on the screen. Councilman Wilson, at the last briefing, you asked if we would put all this information on one map so that we could graphically show the economic impact information as it's proposed geographically throughout downtown. So let me start with the green on the map. On the green site on the map is where the current city hall is located.
And I think it's important at this time that the letter that the Mayor Pro Tem wants to read into the record, which will pertain to that green site, be placed in the record. So I'm going to ask the Mayor Pro Tem to read the letter.
Yes. This letter was written to Councilman Starwell Anthony, who I asked him his permission to put this in the record today. It was through Scott Adams that we, the other council members, received this letter also. At our previous meeting when we was dealing with the Cordish group, a question was asked of them, is it important at this time to your group to get this city hall site for your development of an arena and entertainment center downtown? And Mr. Tellis was a little bit vague in his answer. Real quick, I'd like to read this letter. This is one of the issues raised when we met in your office with the future of the current city hall site and whether the Cordish companies would be willing to proceed with the arena development and entertainment district without the land under the city building. As I mentioned during our meeting, without the city hall land available for development, the scope of the project would be drastically altered, and because of the potentially significant impact on the development, all of the partners would need to consider and weigh in on the issue. I further stated during the public hearing that we should consider the issue. Since the vote to move or not move the city hall is quickly approaching, it seemed prudent to consider this issue sooner than later and to expedite the portion of our feasibility analysis. Based upon our initial analysis, we have concluded the removal of the City Hall building is critical to the Cordish Company's involvement in the full and complete build-out of the arena, entertainment district, and hotel casino. Without its removal, there simply is not enough room to program the various uses and have the district function in a successful manner. As it stands, the arena and entertainment district footprint on the 12 acres adjacent to the City Hall site is very tight. Without the availability of the City Hall site, the functionality of the arena adjoining entertainment district and its future expansion would be critically impaired. Please do not hesitate to contact me on this issue if you have any further questions. And signed by Port Tallis, Development Director of the Cordish Company, Inc. Thank you.
All right, would you make that part of the record, please? All right, I'm sorry for the interruption. But
That's okay.
I thought that was the appropriate
Yes,
response.
I appreciate that. I think the important point to make here is that at the time the idea for conceiving this swap and working with the Live Work Las Vegas group was generated, we were actually looking at expanding our existing city hall. And I think the notion was, if we're going to build a new city hall, how can we do it in a way to maximize the use of the city's real estate assets? So really this project is much more than just a city hall. It's a catalyst for essentially a new redevelopment program going forward downtown. And by moving City Hall away from that green site, the current location, you make a major project like Cordish is planning available on that former site. Now where it's moving to is on the yellow side. And we've indicated on that map with a diagram the location on the 5th block of the new City Hall. By moving it into that site, it becomes a catalyst for the 5 blocks of the Live Work Las Vegas development planned by Forest City. Their intent is then to leverage on that along with the new intermodal bus terminal to build about 900,000 square feet of new office space and ground floor retail space in that development. So as part of this transaction, we were negotiating a development agreement for the City Hall itself, which directly generates jobs, but also negotiating how that 5-block development works, what the city can do to facilitate that development. Now, we didn't want to have to pay cash for that City Hall site. So we said, let's swap for it using the equity we already have in the land that we own at Symphony Park. This is not a new concept. We just didn't invent this for this project. In fact, it's not new to the city of Las Vegas. We actually swapped years ago land to get Symphony Park using equity from another site we own. In fact, there's numerous cities around the United States, Orlando being one, that have done similar swaps with private developers to get new city halls. So that was the concept behind this. Making that swap means we didn't have to pay cash for that site, and it also vests Forest City in parcel PQ on Symphony Park. And that then puts in place that remaining piece of the complex, multifaceted transaction. Now Forest City has equity in parcel PQ. The clock is running on that equity. And so their intent is to build a 1,000-room casino hotel, more than $1 billion investment that would drive the northern end of Symphony Park. I think the other thing that I should point out is that the Regional Transportation Commission is moving forward with their new intermodal terminal. That would be in one of the other 5 blocks in the Live Work Las Vegas project, which makes the blue site available for redevelopment around the old post office building on the post office block, which is where we're planning our mob museum. So, in essence, there are 5 projects leveraged by one transaction. There's a new city hall that directly creates construction jobs, creates a catalyst and new vitality, and 4 other developments. The City Hall Arena site, the Live Work Las Vegas development, the Parcel PQ Casino Hotel, and the development by CIM Group on the post office block around the existing post office. In total, when you look at how that generates new real estate taxes, that would create new TIF of somewhere in the range of $16 to $20 million and jobs of over 13,000 jobs. A number of cities that might be doing a transaction like this might be only leveraging one. We have 4 private developments that are being leveraged. The probability in moving forward of one of those 4 projects happening is very, very high. And being able to use the revenue from one of those projects against the payments of City Hall under the interlocal agreement that's under consideration before you today. Another thing I wanted to point out, we several weeks ago commissioned John Restrepo, to look at how many jobs it actually takes in the private sector in our redevelopment program downtown to support one city employee, under the notion that there's an economic impact of private sector job creation, and that it's the private sector and the activities of the private sector that nourishes and sustains the public sector. Their analysis showed that for every 37 private sector construction jobs, you can sustain one city employee. For 18 permanent jobs in the private sector, you can sustain one city employee. So there's even a direct nexus in moving forward to sustaining the viability of city government. We're in the midst of doing economic development and doing redevelopment for that reason. That is the public purpose that we're establishing here today. And I wanted to make that point because one of the items that's under consideration under your joint agenda is a resolution making that public purpose finding. And I can't emphasize more just how much catalytic job generation, private investment is generated out of this one transaction that leverages 5 different projects. In closing, I wanted to just quickly outline the items. You have a hefty joint agenda here, and I just wanted to very quickly go over what it is that's before you under consideration today. City Council item number 50 is what we've been referring to as the Omnibus COPS ordinance. That is the ordinance that when you pass authorizes the issuance of the COPS, and it ties to the transaction documents. By approving that, you're approving COPS and referencing all of the transaction documents that are a part of that transaction. But there is also an owner participation agreement for TIF financing for the block project, so there's a city resolution for that, and there's an RDA resolution for that. You've approved many of these previously on numerous projects, like the World Market Center, the Mulaski Corporate Center, and a few other projects. There's also a new interlocal agreement that we've referenced that backstops your lease payments on the new City Hall. There's a resolution of the RDA for that interlocal agreement. There's a city resolution approving that interlocal agreement. And then I think I just mentioned that under the new state law, whenever we do a land transaction, in this case we're doing an exchange, we have to now make new public purpose findings that find that that exchange is in the public's best interest. And we're doing that under this resolution, which is joint agenda item number 7. And then finally, there's sort of an omnibus resolution of the City Council that approves all of the transaction documents in their entirety and what's called a joint approval certificate. Under the original master development agreement that you approved under this project, we referenced that at the tail end of this project, when we've determined that it's feasible, we know we can build it under budget, and all the feasibility issues are worked out, we know we can finance it, we would issue a joint approval certificate. It's jointly approved by Forest City and the city that says we're going to move forward with the project. So that gets approved in that resolution as well. So those are the items that you have under consideration for you today. And that's the end of staff's presentation.
All right, very good. Before we turn it over to the council for questions of staff, I'd like to make a statement which I think is, at least in my perspective, probably the essence of what we're here for today. This transaction, if approved, will be the keystone of a new downtown in conjunction with what's happened on the west side of the railroad tracks at Symphony Park. To me, it's critical that we pass this because it gives us, as has been pointed out by Mr. Adams in particular, the ability to create over and this is with a B, $4 billion worth of construction in the downtown. $4 billion worth of construction. It will create over 13,000 permanent jobs. The City Hall in and of itself will not start construction 2 years from now, 3 years from now, but next month. It would put... When the construction is in full bloom, there will be 800 to 1,000 construction workers employed in the community. And this is a capital project. But the most important capital that this community has is its human capital. Sometimes we forget that with the bricks and the mortar. But it's the human capital that we're trying to protect as much as anything else by creating jobs. About 2 weeks ago, I had one of my coffees with the mayor. And a young woman, I don't know, I think she's here today, is Ms. Clark here? Come on up, Ms. Clark. Ms. Clark said she'd be nervous if I called her up here, but I think it's important that we put a face with what we're talking about, so when those who are considering whether or not we're doing the right thing sees a woman who approached me at a coffee with the mayor, and when she sat down, her eyes welled up with tears, and she said that her husband was in the building trades, in particular a plumber, that his employment out at City Center was coming to an end, and that she was vitally concerned whether or not she would be able to pay the mortgage, feed the family, and to continue to live in this community. So I thought it was important to ask you here today. And you asked me, did you not? You said, Mayor, please create work for my husband. Have I represented it correctly?
Yes, you have.
Would you like to add anything else?
I just urge you guys to please push this through because my husband's local has over 700 people on the list. And those people have been out of work for a very long time. I took a phone call about a month ago from his local asking for food collections because people were running out of food. They were running out of their employment. Their unemployment benefits were running out, and people were starting to go hungry. And I know that there's a lot of unions that have a lot more people on their list than what Local 525 has. And so I just urge you guys to please help us.
And the way we help is to create jobs for the people in our community. That's the bottom line, and that's what government is all about, because we're supposed to preserve and protect the public good. That's the oath that we took, and that's the issue that's before us today. And with that, I thank you very much for coming down here. I did not want to embarrass you, but I think it's important that we humanize this. This isn't some abstract situations of bricks and mortar. These are human beings who are being involved, and this is our way of a mini stimulus to make sure that our community will succeed and be able to go on. And if the rest of the world has confidence in us as far as buying the bonds, then we better have confidence in ourselves. It's that simple.
Thank you.
I would like to reserve some time at the end of the comments to make a few more comments. I just thought it was important today at this time to recognize our supporters. When we started this process many months ago, I remember looking out there and we seen all these laborers out there supporting us. And at the time, we was having some other concerns with the culinary union, which have been ironed out today. But again, though, it's important to me that we let the people know that we have representatives from the sheet metal workers, the laborers, the electrical workers, the roofers, iron workers, plumbers and pipe fitters, bricklayers, teamsters, painters, and allied trades, as well as carpenters. I don't know whether they're all represented here still, but I think we all deserve to give them a big round of applause for themselves. I think it's important. Thank you. I think it's important that we as a council support those people that supported us. Thank you.
And we also have with us, so the record is complete, we have a lot of important people here, citizens of our community. You're all important to us. And I'm not going to point you out by names, but there's some folks in a representative capacity who are here who I think we have to at least recognize, and if they want to address us, recognizing the time constraints, that will definitely be considered. We have Summer Hollingsworth. Summer is the president of the Nevada Development Authority. We've got Mr. Steve Hill representing the Chamber of Commerce. We have Don Snyder representing the Smith Center of Performing Arts. We have Dick Geyer representing the Arts District, and I must have left out a dozen other people at least who have representative roles here, but all of those people are here today in support of this project because they love the community as well as the council members.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Councilwoman.
I just wanted to ask two quick questions, if I could.
Certainly.
I know this project will create much-needed jobs for our community, and I see many of the members of those unions here. But it's my understanding there's a project labor agreement in the works, and I'm happy to hear about this, but I want to emphasize something that I've emphasized before in our public meetings, and that is that we hire local labor. And I mean that... The city of Las Vegas is taking a chance on this. Anytime you go for something big, there's always some chance involved. But the city of Las Vegas is doing this for the city's residents, and I just want to reemphasize that again. Secondly, I wanted to ask if we have monies from that need to come, if it comes up later, and I know this is highly unexpected, but if something needed to come from the general fund, there'd be a vote on that, right? Before anything came that would have to come from any additional funds that we talked about here.
Yes, for the record, Mark Vincent again. The project's fully funded with the issuance of these bonds. There shouldn't be anything else relative to this project. And as I explained with the certificates of participation, you'll have an item on your agenda every year to fund the annual net lease payment. So.
And I mention that because we want to help our laborers in the construction industry. We also want to help our laborers here in City Hall, and I don't want to see any problems occur there. So that would not be occurring.
It should not.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other, well, I'd like if there are any statements that the council wants to make at this point, and then we'll hear from the public. All right, Councilman Anthony. Councilman Anthony, then Councilman Bartlett.
Thank you, Mayor. This is this will probably be the last time we vote on this item today, whether it goes up or down. But I just want to state my case. I am going to continue to vote no on this project. I just wanted to state my case one more time on why I'm doing that. And obviously, the majority will speak today, and we'll go along with the majority, and we'll move on from there. But I know. Talking to Scott Adams and Mr. Vincent, the City Hall project has been around for, discussion for about 4 years now. And 4 years ago was a completely different time. Things were great. Nobody was expecting a recession. Things were glowing, and I may have gone along with it too back then. This is a different world today. It's just a different world. And like you mentioned, this is risk management. And in my opinion, in this particular time, this is way too risky of a project to take on. I just want to give you my reasons behind that. The bond that we're going to be taking on it's a 30-year bond, and once you put in the principal, interest, and fees, it comes out to about $350 million. So we're going to be taking on a debt of $350 million. And when I first came on the City Council, I was continually told this will not be taxpayer money paying for this bond. It will be redevelopment authority money. It will not be general fund money. Well, that's not the case today. The forecast today is for the general fund to make these payments because the redevelopment authority budget is going to be in pretty bad shape for a while. So for a time period, the general fund is going to be paying for this until the redevelopment can help out because of the agreement. I don't know when that is. That could be 3-4 years from now. It could be 15 years from now. So, but for a period of time, we are going to be using general fund money to pay for that. And those are the exact same funds we use to provide services to our residents for the operating costs of the City Hall. And it doesn't fit with me. And we did have a pretty good presentation last week, or 2 weeks ago. And this is what I got out of the economic outlook. You mentioned 4 to 7 years for this to turn around. What turn around means, I don't know what that means, but 4 to 7 years for things to even get better. Foreclosures in Las Vegas, 1 in 20, compared to 135 in the United States. It was interesting that the gentleman mentioned that the current mess we're in is because we borrowed so much money. Individuals, everybody borrowed money to do projects. Well, that's kind of what we're doing today. When that kind of got us in a mess in the first place. Las Vegas is going to be is going to lag the United States in the recovery. An interesting thing that was mentioned was Las Vegas has to diversify our economy so we don't go through this again. Well, this project involves another hotel casino. We're not doing much to diversify the economy there. And again, the next shoe that's going to drop, from what I was told at that presentation, was the commercial industry is going to have a difficult time. Credit cards are going to add to it. So it's going to get worse, what I heard from that particular presentation. In addition to taking on $350 million in debt, we're freezing positions, We're eliminating positions at City Hall. We're laying off employees. We're asking employees to take an 8% pay cut. The shortfall over the next 5 years is going to be $430 million, which is double what it was 6 months ago. So we're shortfall is $430 million, and we're taking on $350 million in debt. Our city manager has told us that our top priority should be fiscal integrity, maintaining critical services, and preserving existing city jobs. This kind of a risk, I think, is going to, we're going to have a tough time with those particular priorities. And the other part that bothers me is because of the situation we're in right now, all current construction projects that are not under design or have not started are going to be delayed. And that includes fire stations, it includes transportation projects, it includes a lot of capital projects that are important to the citizens of Las Vegas, and one of them includes a fire station in Sun City that's critical to the safety of that particular community. And those are jobs that we're going to lose. We can't do those projects. We're going to lose jobs. And in my mind, and this may be a discussion for down the road, in my mind, it might be better to take a smaller Build America bond in order to complete these projects that are going to create jobs and do things for our community. That may be a discussion down the road. Again, the current City Hall meets our needs. It's paid off. Metro's going to be moving out here pretty soon, so there's going to be plenty of room in the building, and we're already spending money moving into the atrium building to house more of our city employees. So just wanted to put that on the record. I still don't think it's the right time to do this, and I'm going to, again, vote no on the project. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Mr. Vincent, do you want to, I thought when Councilwoman Tarkanian asked the question about the general fund, you answered it. Our understanding is that we're not making payments out of the general fund at this time. We're not making any payments for 3 years.
Yeah, the deal contemplates capitalized interest for 3 years, so we won't make any payments for 3 years, and in the fourth year, the interest-only payment would be about $3.5 million, and I think I put the rest on the record. So that was how we structured the deal: 3 years of capitalized interest, and then 4 years of interest only, again, to give time for the recovery to set in. And we believe there will be a recovery. We believe, obviously, the risk is there, but we believe that these projects related to the City Hall move are going to be a catalyst to that recovery.
Right. Well,
But
I said it before, I'm going to say it again, I'm going to stand by it. If we aren't in good shape 5 years from now, we're going to be speaking Mandarin and eating chow mein and calling each other Mr. Kwando.
Mr. Mayor, Mr. Mayor, I would like to learn Mandarin if I could, but aside from that, what I'm asking is, we're not paying anything for 3 years. My understanding was that we would not be taking or requesting anything from the general fund for many years, and that would only be in the sort of a dire emergency, and if that should occur, we vote on it. Now, if I'm wrong, could you tell me, and where does the money, what was that, Mr.? Where is the money coming from starting in the third year to pay the interest?
Okay. Yes. We, as I've said, we've budgeted for this project as conservatively as we can. We structured the deal as conservatively as we can. While we contemplate, as Scott described, there's at least 4 other projects, and the likelihood of at least one of them bearing fruit is pretty high. The fact is, we don't have that fruit today. There is no tax increment from any of those projects today. There's no land sale proceeds from this facility today. And so we structured the deal again so that there'd be 3 years of capitalized interest, 4 years of interest only, in the hopes that during that period of time, that at least one or more of those projects will bear fruit and produce jobs. As Scott described, private sector jobs are needed to support public sector services. That's just the way that works. And so in my budgeting and all the presentations we've ever given, including the information report that we gave in June, has always said, and we've always budgeted as if it's all coming out of the general fund. Now, the issues with respect to the recession that we're in and the struggles that we're having with our own financial situation are true. We're 2 years into the recession. We may be another 2 to get out. It may be 5 years, another 3 years before we ever get to where we were before the recession. And we've tried to take that into account in our forecasting. But the reality is we have a budget shortfall in fiscal year 2011 with no lease payment. And we're going to have the same shortfall in fiscal year 12 with no lease payment, and the same in fiscal year 13. We have the shortfall today for a different reason. It has nothing to do with City Hall, and you are helping us take action independent of this to deal with that. So,
And I understand the difference between the two. The problems we have in the city, we would have if we weren't going into this or not. But my understanding was that the RDA was going to be would be providing the funding before we would even consider the general fund. And then in addition, my understanding is if we suppose we sell this land, that money goes into the general fund. So you would have to take general fund money, but it's not general fund money that we were using within our regular budget. It's the additional income that's coming from the sales. I'm just trying to clarify that, because I do feel strongly that we can't take much out of our general fund and maintain our working staff and the services. We're cutting to the bone right now.
we talked about that on, I forget what presentation, it might have been November 18th, I've lost track, about the risk of what happens if none of these projects come to fruition and it's all borne by the general fund. And we've talked about, what does that potentially do to the general fund? And maybe if I give you some history numbers, it may help. I mean, there's still risk, and we're talking about managing risk here. In fiscal years 13, 14, 15, the interest-only payment is going to be about 1.7% of our general fund revenues. 1.7% of our general fund revenues. When it goes to full bore at $13.5 million, assuming, again, no revenues coming from land sale proceeds, any tax increment, or any kind of support from the RDA, it would be 2.3% of our general fund revenues. Now, I've represented, when I was asked the question last time, is that too much risk for the city to bear? Again, I'm assuming nothing comes from the RDA. There's no help, no assistance, and I said that I thought that those were manageable numbers. Why did I say that? And so maybe there's another question that needs to be asked. What, historically, have we taken out of the general fund towards capital projects in the past, even before we hit the recession? And for fiscal years 1999 through 2008, on average, we transferred out 5% of our general fund revenues to fund capital projects. Most of that was parks and recreation, and there was some fire stations and equipment as well. So we have a long history of having the capacity to transfer money out of general fund for capital projects, which is one of the reasons why we try not to spend every dollar we get in terms of our operations, because some capital projects have to be funded by the general fund. Anyway, the point of that is that when I look at it and I say, 3 years down the road, we're going to be looking at a payment that's going to be about 1.6, 1.7% of our general fund revenues. Do I think we'll be able to handle that? My answer is, yeah, I think we will. I don't think it's unreasonable. It's and we get lost in this a little bit. Scott's talked about the 4 projects that this could spin off additional jobs, which produce taxes, which feed the economy. But even if those things didn't happen, it's not like we're getting nothing. You're still getting an asset on a piece of land. You're getting it at City Hall. Now, I'm suggesting, again, we didn't suggest that this was a deal all about City Hall, but it's not like we're getting nothing.
You're talking very, very conservatively, right? You're saying that if we didn't do anything, if we didn't sell City Hall, if we didn't have this, none of these would come through, then you would need to go into the general fund.
Right. The Bill Arndt talked about it earlier. We've added this new interlocal agreement between the city and the RDA. And the purpose of that agreement is... Oh.
The slide.
Yeah, the
slide. Go back to the slide.
Click back to the agreements. That agreement gives the council and the RDA boards, which is you all, the ability to decide how much, when those revenues are available from the RDA, be it land sale proceeds, be it tax increment revenues, when those are available, you can decide how much of that goes to the general fund to help support the lease payment. I have budgeted as if none of it's going to be there because that was the most conservative thing for me to do. You've asked repeatedly from the very beginning, what's the worst-case scenario? I've budgeted this as if it's the worst-case scenario, that there's no revenues from any of these projects, and the general fund has to bear the burden.
Okay, I just wanted to know that because I think it's very confusing. It was confusing to me when we talked about general fund, because I knew, well, if we sold this, we were going to use it for the other, for our lease in the city hall and all those other things. But when you say from the general fund, then you're thinking you're taking from what you've already got planned for expenditures. But no, that's just because it has to go into the general fund when we sell it, and then we take it from there.
That is true to the extent that there's revenues coming from the RDA, yes.
From the RDA,
To the
right.
extent there aren't any land sale revenues, then yes, the general fund will have to make up that difference.
And that would be a very dire, conservative projection.
I would think so.
Okay.
Thank you. Councilman Barlow. And I'm not trying to cut you short, but we have about a half an hour left to go.
I only need about 29 minutes.
You got it. Go for it.
Thank you all so very much. And I just want to say that in 2008, I hosted 8 neighborhood meetings throughout my ward, from the west to the east and the north to the south. And I had the privilege of sharing those meetings with our now city manager, Betsy Fredwell. And one of the key components within the slide presentation that I delivered to all of my constituents to basically educate them and to get their input as it relates to should we move forward as a council for new city hall. One of the key components that they bought into was the fact that the RDA was playing a key role in this project, in this development, and the hit to the general fund would be minimal. Should we not sell the current site, the 12 acres, should Forest City walk away? I believe that with the numbers in which you've shared, Mark, specifically the 5% monies that we pulled from the general fund from 1999 to 2008 was 5% versus the 2% or 1.7, I'll just round up to the nearest whole number, 2%, in order to pull from the general fund to move forward with the city hall. I think that's a very good point that you bring up in that respect. I do have a question in regards to, if you go back 1 or 2 slides, you had the COPS, the service funds, the UP site, the UP Phase 1 bonds. Go back one more. It's probably closer to the beginning. Right there. Explain to me the service funds grants, because, of course, and we've been hearing, that nothing's guaranteed. Explain to me what that represents, as well as the UP. What does the UP represent in Phase 1 bonds, as far as the $5.1 million?
Okay, the internal service funds, we have several funds that are set up to accrue dollars to pay for things like our phone system, Channel 2, and things like that. Those funds will have balances that we'll use. They're there for a reason, to provide deferred replacement of those systems. Those are budgeted to provide that same level of support in the new city halls we've been getting in the old city hall. So we're using that as the funding source to build the new phone system, to build Channel 2 and some of the other equipment that's going in this city hall project. The UP Phase 1 bonds, we had funds left over that were part of the Phase 1 bonds that were issued for infrastructure on Symphony Park that we used to front some of the initial expenditures for design and development of City Hall. If you remember, there were two tranches of funding, $5 million and $5.1 million, that we've used to get us to this point to design and do all the soft costs. Part of that was UP Phase 1 bonds, and those are RDA-funded bonds.
Okay. Mark, you showed me on yesterday going to the, and I didn't see that you had this slide, and I wonder if you have it, the slide that showed the tax credits for the Build America bond. I believe the whole number was $300 million, and then a reduction. The tax credit was $100 million, which basically brought the cost down to $2 and some change. You follow me?
Close.
Okay, then it's in the document that you showed me yesterday. I would like for you to go over that. Put it in the middle, if you will,
Right,
and
but-
then just
You won't be able to read it.
Right, keep in mind, though, when you make your
Yeah,
presentation, we got
let me
half
just-
an hour now.
Let me just
Okay.
read it to you real quick. The principal and interest on the bonds, the combined bonds, is $481 million. You subtract the Build America credits, it's 100.5, and then you subtract about $28 million in capitalized interest. That'll get you to a net debt service, what our net debt service will be after all that, of $352 million over the next 30 years, which is, I think, the comment that Councilman Anthony made.
right. And so with the tax credit, $100 million of that will reduce that number to 2.
Reduces it to 351.
Reduces it from 4 to 351.
From 480 to 351.
Okay, and
Which really is what makes this financing affordable for us.
okay. I'll hold off on my following comments till the end. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, I hope we'll have an end. I'm worried about the time, so Councilman.
Well, I'm going to move fast,
Good.
and I appreciate
With 3 hours difference, and they close at 1 o'clock.
everybody bearing with me. I believe it was my question to you yesterday, Betsy, that prompted Mark's response. And Mark, if you could look at me, please. My question to you yesterday was, how much money has the city allocated towards capital projects in the last 5 to 10 years? Because that's what we're talking about doing here. We're talking about allocating money to build something. And Mark, your answer was, maybe you gave some gross figure, but the bottom line is, on average, about 5% of our general fund for the last 9 years has gone towards a capital project. Is that right?
That's correct. In the last 11 years, we've transferred out $195 million.
So what we're doing here, and this is the point I want to make, is nothing new. This is what cities do. We spend money to build things. And I want to make that point because it's not like this is something that's new to any city or any of us. The first, boy, I wish I had my voice. Maybe we're lucky I don't. The first payment is due in year 4, Mark. Is that about fiscal year 14?
It would be, I can't even read it myself. Fiscal year 13, the first interest payment would be $3.5 million.
Fiscal year 13. So we've got another 3 years, if you will, and that payment's going to be $3.5 million.
In that year.
Ideally, it would come out of RDA funds if other projects that we hope come to fruition fund the RDA so we can use the money out of the RDA. But if we can't, the City of Las Vegas, through our general fund, will pay these $3.5 million for about 4 years, correct?
The next 3 years would be about $9.5 million a year.
Okay. The
Because
next
it's a
3.
partial, you're selling in the middle of the fiscal year. That's
Okay.
why you're getting that.
But then we jump to about year 9. That is our huge payment of $15 million. Is that right?
No, in fiscal year 2017,
Okay.
and that goes to 13.
Okay, that's why
$13.4
that's why I meant 9 years from now.
13.4 million.
Okay. And then we talked about worst-case scenario, and you talked about Forest City walking away, and I just want to highlight something. We talked about this in our briefing yesterday. And the representative from Forest City is right here to correct me if I'm wrong, but they have a $100 million plus equity position in this land right now. And we're talking about the land where the City Hall and the Block project is located right now. So this developer has about $180 million already invested with other people into the purchase of this land. Is that right? Where the new proposed City Hall and Block project is going.
I don't want to speak on their behalf, but I believe their total investment at this point is about $130 million.
Okay, $130 million. And then there's about another $5 million in what we call soft costs or hard costs?
Soft costs,
Soft
up to this
costs.
point.
I mean, my point is that this is a developer with a proven track record that's coming into the city of Las Vegas that's already invested a lot of money in this multifaceted venture. And furthermore, they have incentives. They're not just going to build us a city hall and walk away. Because once the city hall's done, they get land in Symphony Park to build a casino. Is that right? A hotel casino. And forgive my voice again.
Yes.
So the likelihood, in my opinion, of Forest City walking away is very, very small. Would you agree with that?
That's why we're here. I made the point earlier that they're still here with us at our side. They're an investment-grade company, and I see them all the way through it.
Okay, and then Mayor Goodman, I appreciate we're under a time constraint. You want to give the public a chance to talk. I guess this is going to be my last opportunity to say a few words, and I just want to say a few words. Councilman Anthony, I respect the position you're taking. I truly do. But I look at this as a golden opportunity for us city elected officials here in Las Vegas to do what other cities wish they had the opportunity to do. It's amazing. Think about it. There's other cities going bankrupt. There's other cities that are suffering much worse from a recession than we are. They'd love to have this opportunity. And I have 2 pages of notes. I'm not going to bore you all with this. I'll just end by saying, in my opinion, this vote today is our city center. The Strip's got theirs, but this is our city center. Thank you.
Mayor Goodman?
Mr. Barlow?
I heard Councilman Wilson state that this is the last opportunity. I too have a couple pages of notes, but I wouldn't bore you with that. But if you don't mind, I would like to have my closing comments if you're not going to open the comments back up after public discussion.
Okay, and then we'll hear from the Mayor Pro Tem. No? Or Forest City. Okay, fine. Let's
Please.
All right, I'm just worried that you're not going to have the opportunity that you're asking for, and I want to give it to you.
Okay, well, great. One thing that I do want to say is that I commend Forest City for being a partner with the City of Las Vegas in regards to all of the developments that are going on here in the downtown area. And this is a very exciting time, specifically during a time in which the economy is not so good. And you can look around the country and see that there's no movement going on in construction or any other developments. We have a lot of foreclosures, residential foreclosures, as well as commercial foreclosures that continue to increase and get on the tax rolls, or I should say come off the tax rolls. One thing that I can share is that I want to make sure, and Forest City has made this commitment, and they've demonstrated that when it comes to minority participation. I want to make sure that we continue to establish a true footprint that we can take from this particular development that we can utilize as a starting point for all future minority participation, specifically when it comes to monies that the cities are sharing with private and other developers to do major projects such as this. This is going to be a turning point for the downtown area, which will basically, I believe, will spin off into the outlying residential communities to really benefit the city as a whole. Needless to say, of what we're doing inside of Symphony Park, I believe that this development will be the first domino to many more dominoes to come. And when Forest City come forward, I please would like for you to share with the constituents and those that are viewing your commitment on the record, as well as some of the things that you have already put in place to make sure that minorities have a seat at the table. As I shared with them before, Mayor and Council, that I've spoken to many general contractors, architects, laborers, non-laborers, who are all committed to playing a part with and I say our City Hall because this is the community's City Hall that we're looking to bring online should this vote pass today. And so with that, I've spoken with a lot of residents, a lot of my constituents, and they have concerns in regards to the city using general fund in regards to building this new City Hall, but they also have stated, Councilman, if it means my brother, my husband, my sister, my brother going back to work, then you need to do what's in the best interest of the entire city, and that's move forward with jobs for our community. And I thought that was a very selfless comment from the residents of Ward 5, and I would like to commend them for standing behind and supporting the efforts of this council with moving forward with putting people back to work. So with that, I would like to share with you all that I am in support of moving forward for the new City Hall development. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Councilwoman.
Yes, I just wanted to say quickly that I started out with a no vote on this project, and it was a no vote because I did not feel we needed a new City Hall for 2 to 5 years, and also because I felt it was more of a want than it was of a need. I had a constituent who contacted me, and he said, please determine the difference between the wants and the needs and vote accordingly. Now, what happened since that time is I was able to talk with some really fine economists. I was able to talk with some leaders in the field. I was able to talk with taxpayer advocacy groups. And I came to a change of opinion on what the needs were. And I want to just read some things, if I could, from a letter from Don Schneider that he sent to the mayor and copied to us, because he summarized more eloquently than I think I could why it's important to make this determination. The vote on the City Hall, and I'm paraphrasing, is certainly not easy, and it's also not at all what it seems. It isn't what it seems. It's not a vote to simply build a new building. It's not just a vote to create a City Hall that's more efficient, that has a smaller carbon footprint, and that costs less to operate. The decision is much larger than that. First, we will be voting on using tools that Congress and the President have provided to state and local governments to stimulate the economy and help get people to work. The availability of the Build America bonds, coupled with our AA- bond rating that we received in the city, has made this a possibility. Secondly, we all know that the stimulus provided by the construction of City Hall is of itself just a drop in the bucket compared to what's needed, but it is the drop that will ultimately cause the bucket to overflow with projects that will come behind it. It's clearly another in a series of catalysts for additional development, especially private sector development. Thirdly, the current City Hall sits directly in the middle of a most valuable piece of real estate. Even if the city did not have an agreement with the Cordish companies, freeing up that property makes good sense purely from an asset management perspective. I talked with one economist. He says when you start in the public sector, everybody criticizes you and says act like a business, and then when you start to act like a business and look at your assets as a business would, people complain. But that's That's where we are right now. And of course, the placement of City Hall directly across from Symphony Park creates a synergy that could ignite a series of development projects that could be the cornerstone to the completion of what we have as a vision for the city of Las Vegas. You know, sometimes I don't agree with the mayor, and I had somebody say to me,
Good news is she lives in the same neighborhood, so.
no, not the same, nearby. We don't have as much land as he has in his. But the thing is that one thing he's done, in sometimes ways I can't understand, but he's revitalized our thinking. I saw other administrations come through, other administrations that had my friends there involved, and they didn't get done what he did with the World Market Center, with Mulaski Building, with the Outlet Center, all of those things. And at the time they bought the 61 acres, everybody thought they were crazy. When McCarran started to do its expansion, I remember Thalia Dondero was on the committee, and they criticized it so much. They'll never need that much airport space. And what have they done since then? They've added. We are in a difficult time. I believe in America. I believe in holding fast to your dreams. And that's why I also will be voting on this. Thank you.
Would you like to
Absolutely. Mayor, members of the council, Chris Kempfer with Dimitri Vasilakis. We are here on behalf of Forest City. We do have to put on the record a few things, prompted in large part from a call yesterday from the Mayor Pro Tem saying this thing it's not done yet because of the PLA not being signed. That was something that was absolutely critical. And what we did is we went back, we all worked hard, and we have some conditions that we have to put on the record relating to that. Mayor Pro Tem, thank you for the call. There's an old German saying, you don't have to hit a good mule twice. So I appreciate everything you've done. All right, here are some of those conditions. Between now and December 31st, 2009, Forest City and the building trades will both negotiate in good faith, enter into, and sign a project continuation agreement. That's number one. Number two, the project will be contracted to only union contractors, with the exception that contracts that are at $50,000 or less may be contracted, and it is our intention to absolutely contract with minorities, disadvantaged, and others who may not be union. And I do have to speak that the building trades readily and willingly, enthusiastically accepted the fact that there may be non-union minority contractors that have to be helped in this particular project. Also, all city contracted work has to be exempted by law. We can't mandate that particular work be union work. Also, I want to state, especially for those in 1, 3, and 5, exactly what Councilman Tarkanian, exactly what Councilman Barlow stated, that the building trades have agreed that wards 1, 3, and 5 will receive, under our agreement, a hiring priority for the work to be done on City Hall. So what has happened a lot of times in the past is that projects that have been in your particular wards, the people who lived in those wards have not had the ability to share in the benefits of those projects. Mr. Vasilakis is extremely committed to making sure that those people get the fair opportunity. That's all I really want to say, except what does it say, Your Honor, that over 50% more subscribed? Over 50%. A yes vote here says, I have the same faith in my city that the people outside of it do. And I want to just make one final comment. I know that there's some tendency that we have to pull in the reins when times are tough, but that's not what history's told us we're supposed to do. The Golden Gate Bridge, the Empire State Building, Rockefeller Center, Hoover Dam, our own U.S. Post Office, all built during the Depression. When times are tough, that's when you run. That's when you work hard. That's not when you pull back and lay down. Thank you very much. And Dimitri does have a quick comment.
All right, Mr. Vasilakis.
Good morning, Dimitri Vasilakis from Forest City. I just want to address Councilman Barlow's request. We're certainly have been working very diligently with both yourself and the community to come up with an inclusion program, and we're committed to including the minority groups within this project. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Mayor, one final comment, please. Thank you to Scott,
I don't have
Bill,
time.
to Betsy, and to Mark very much.
All right, thank you. Because of the time constraints here, I'm just going to ask those who are in favor of the project to please stand.
Yes!
All right, those who are opposed? Those who are opposed to the project, okay. All right, Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you, Your Honor. Again, I apologize to those in the audience wishing to speak on this item today, but we are under a time constraint. Our city attorney has told us that we need to hurry this on. I had other comments as well as some of the other council members. I know Councilman Wilson had a lot more he wanted to say. I apologize that we don't have the time to say those things. On item number 50, you know, well, we need to move forward. On item number 50, I want to incorporate all those comments made by staff.
Mayor Pro Tem, excuse me, you do realize the citizen space is a big part of this thing, right? It's a slight citizen.
Okay, yeah, I'm sorry, we have to take this vote.
Go ahead.
All right.
It's a big part.
Okay, you'll have citizens' participation after we take the vote.
For the votes they have.
Brad, could you come out, please, and inform the people what we have to do? Brad?
Sorry, to cut this to the chase, we've been conferring as to how much time you have and what to best do with it. It is the advice of our bond counsel and our office that in the very, very limited amount of time you have left, which looks like about 10 minutes, that you allowed it to public comment on the ordinance. Perhaps setting maybe a 1-minute timer on it or maybe a 2-minute timer on it, not to exceed 10 minutes total. But we would urge that you take public comment on the ordinance at this time with the remaining time that you have left.
Fine.
Does that leave us enough time? I thought 1 o'clock was our deadline.
All right, we're going to have a 1-minute time limitation. I'm going to hold you to it. Mr. Fletcher.
Thank you, Mayor. Dean Fletcher. I'm a fire captain, city resident, and also the president of the Firefighters Union. We are coming out in opposition to this proposal. Number one being, it's always been told that will never come out of the general fund. In all the background information of item number 4 regarding this development, it's clear that there will be money coming out of the general fund. We will be on the hook out of the general fund. Also looking at the background of item number 4, return on investment analysis performed, it's checked no. This was done back in 2008 when things were good. What's going to happen? Where's the money going to come from? Councilman Anthony couldn't have said it any better on capital projects that were stopped. Were fire stations. Sun City, 107, 103, serving West Las Vegas.
Mr. Fletcher, I'm sorry. I'm going to have to abide by this. I know you appreciate what we're trying to do.
You'll hear more from me at public comment. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. I appreciate that. You'll have an adequate opportunity to speak then.
Stan Watson.
1 minute, please.
Las Vegas. And thank you, Brad Gerber, for counseling the council on the right decision. Number one, I must remind this council that while I continue to go ahead and debate with Betsy Fretwell on the policy that's in play right now, Your Honor, current City Hall policy says that 25% plus 5 is the commitment of this council in this city relative to minority participation. For a city, you couldn't find a better developer to come to the table to attempt to go ahead and bring things into focus, because those numbers haven't come close in the history of this RDA agency, Your Honor. Hasn't come close. I understand that we are not at 25% from Dimitri there, but we're going to be working on that situation there because the good faith is there. However, we're not anywhere near where we should be. And in response to the lady whose husband's been working for City Center and for 4 years and making money, I cry every time I go over to West Las Vegas. I'm going to cry today because for the last 4 years, my people come over there. I see every day. They're making nothing. Okay? So let's put it in perspective.
Thank you.
So anyway, that's where we go.
Okay,
congratulations.
Please.
Forest City.
Yes,
Richard Williams representing the Carpenters Union. We are in full support of this project. We have a good relationship with this developer and contractor. You made a good choice. Growth is good. Thank you.
Teddy Russell V, resident of Las Vegas. Due to Councilman Barlow's deplorable, rude, inexcusable, and unacceptable behavior in the last 24 hours, as witnessed by those in City Hall, I think I may run for fabulous councilman.
All right, you're off target. Next, please.
Here's what we have.
No, next, please.
Here's what we have. You can't run this City Hall. You can't run this City Hall. There was not even this notification.
Please, have a seat. We don't have time to listen to you. Next.
I don't think you should get a new one.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, Jack Mallory, Director of Government Affairs, Painters and Allied Trades, District Council 15. We currently have, as a district council, 3 local unions in southern Nevada. We have approximately 1,300 members that are out of work, many of which live in Wards 1, 3, and 5. I implore you to move forward with this project and keep with the promise that government makes to its citizens, that when private interests fail, government will be there to help people out. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, please.
Judy Ingram, Charleston Neighborhood Preservation. I'll keep it short. I'm in full agreement with Mr. Anthony because right now the City Hall has 310,000 square. The new hall will have 310,000 square feet. We now have 270,000 in this building, and we'll have that when the police department moves out, so there'll be plenty of room for 350 new people in this City Hall after the police moves out in 2 years. And we'll also have the debt, that the $18 million that they'll be part of when the cops move into the new building over there. So that's cutting it short. I had other things to say, but thank you.
All right, next, please. How much time do we have, Mr. Jervin?
Less than 5 minutes.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. For the record, Tom Morley, representing Laborers Local 872. Hopefully this project will employ my members, my family, my brothers and sisters. I have brought 400 letters of unemployed laborers who have signed their pledge of support for the project, and I'd like to thank the City Council for their consideration of this project, and we hope it moves forward. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I'm going to cutting off the comment now. Let's have a motion.
Yes, Your Honor. Thank you very much.
Not right now. We don't have any time. I'm sorry. Calling the special joint meeting back to order. And at this point in time, we'll hear the motion of item number 3, I believe, by Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Your Honor. On item R83, 2009, I make a motion to, again, follow staff's recommendation for approval of this item, also incorporating in my motion all those comments made for and against this item at the council meeting.
All right, thank you. Let's vote, please. Opposed?
You didn't vote, sir. You want me to make it in the affirmative for you?
Yes, please. I don't know where my little arrow is.
Okay.
I lost it completely.
There we go.
Thank you. All right, motion carries.
On item number 4, RA 19, 2009, I will make the same motion as on the above items.
All right, thank you. Let's vote, please. Opposed?
Councilman Wilson. There we go.
And item 5.
Motion carries.
And on item 5, I'm going to make the same motion as I did on the previous items.
Thank you. Please vote. Opposed?
You're still missing. You want me to vote for the affirmative?
You got it.
There we go. You got it.
Motion carries.
And item 6, I make a motion to follow staff's recommendation for approval of this item also, with all the comments incorporated.
All right, let's vote, please. Opposed? Motion carries.
Yes, Your Honor. And again, I think I'd like to read a little bit of this in the record, please. Discussion of possible action regarding a City of Las Vegas resolution finding that the proposed real estate exchange by and between City Parkway 4A, Inc. and PQ Las Vegas, LLC for a parcel located in the area bounded by Main Street, First Street, Lewis Avenue, and Clark Avenue for the parcel known as PQ and Sympathy Park is in the best interest of the public. I want to put on the record those things that Mr. Adams put on record. I I think it's imperative that they truly understand what we're doing on this item. So that's my motion, Your Honor.
Very good. Let's vote, please. Opposed? Motion carries.
And on item 8, R85, 2009, this is also related to item 7. My same comments for my approval from item 7 will go forward with this item here also.
Thank you. Please vote. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. We'll move on to citizens' participation. Public comment during this portion of the agenda must be limited to matters within the jurisdiction of the City Council and the Redevelopment Agency. No subject may be acted upon by the City Council and Redevelopment Agency unless that subject is on the agenda and is scheduled for action. If any member of the public wishes to speak, please come up, identify yourselves. We'll put the 3-minute timer on. Folks, I see there are a lot of people here. I don't believe we're going to be able to start, even at the best of intentions, until
We were 2:30, somewhere in there.
2:30. I'm sorry, but by the time we get through, you might stick around. We'll see how long the citizens' participation lasts. But depending on that, we may have to start as late as 2:30, maybe as early as 2:15 for the afternoon agenda. Ms. Duncan.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Mayor and City Council. My name is Catherine Duncan. I serve as president of the Las Vegas Ward 5 Chamber of Commerce, and the new City Hall development is really critical to the success of Ward 5, and we thank you for your vote today. The one concern we have, however, is over the project labor agreement, which requires all contracts over $50,000 to go to union companies. Let's set an example. A union company that lives in Summerlin gets the job if it's over $50,000, but a non-union company that lives in Ward 5 doesn't get the job. We need to seriously look at the project labor agreement, revisit it, and see how it immediately affects the redevelopment area that it's supposed to protect. And I would love to sit in on those project labor agreements as you have those discussions, if I may. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, please.
Yes. Now, Juanita Clark, representing Charleston Neighborhood Preservation, against this project, primarily because of the requirements legislatively at a state level that it was required to go, we feel, around the people, council and mayor pro tem. Because of all those situations and the variety of things that there were, and I'm just going to run through a few things here of ones we just passed. And in number 3, Charleston Neighborhood Preservation contends that eminent domain used by the Las Vegas Redevelopment Agency is unconstitutional and un-American, as would be used by a body of elected representatives, and extremely polarizing to the term reasonable, which, and the term reasonable is in item 3. In number 4, I'm going to skip that. We do have copies for whatever it's worth. I guess you could write on the back. And number 5, we had a query here. Why does the introductory interlocal agreement paragraph omit a word there? Is there more than one City of Las Vegas interlocal agreement? And yes, there are. There are 3, evidently. And that was not clear in there. Who is the Chief Operations Officer of the City of Las Vegas Redevelopment Agency?
Ms. Fretwell. Scott Adams.
Scott. Okay. Yeah, something was said that, but I didn't quite catch what. Okay, I have one more query. The Chief Financial Officer for the City of Las Vegas RDA.
That would be Mark Vincent.
Mark. Okay. In number 6, there's a quote in there: the intent to pay a portion of the debt on the new City Hall if and when those funds are available. And I don't know if there's an explanation for that. We just had a kind of a joke here. We said that we asked that all parties would have such accommodation for intent regarding property tax, sewer fees, paying of parking meter fees, and things like that. So is there any comment about that quote from item 6?
Well,
intent to pay a portion of the debt on the new City Hall if and when those funds are available?
Excuse me.
For some reason, our recording has stopped.
Okay, if you just bear with us, the recording stopped, so we have to get you on the record. Mr. Riggleman, if there's a breakdown with Channel 2, let me know. All right, very good. Are we ready to go then? Okay,
Okay, thank you, council.
right, we're happy to hear from you.
They just have more than one talent. Okay. Continuing on, was there an answer to that?
Yes, I was going to tell you that hypothetically, let's assume we sold City Hall, this building here, to somebody for $300 million. We could take that money and retire the debt on the new City Hall.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor. Appreciate that.
I think we have another problem.
I know, yes.
Are we okay?
Yes, if I could, can we have Mr. Arnott come up, please, and talk about the Golden Nugget real quick?
Yes, Mr. Art?
I think I'm getting Councilman Wolfson's voice.
It's not a good thing. In response to a question?
Well, yeah, she wants to know where the money is going to come from.
Okay.
Mr. Arnott, this is in kind of what we talked about a little bit earlier through Betsy about the new Golden Nugget Tower that just opened up, the tax money that is going to be developed from that new tower that goes into the RDA. That money is going to be able to go into the new City Hall. Can you explain that real quick, please?
Sure. For the record, Bill Arntz, Director, Office of Business Development. During the longer discussion, one of the questions was where the revenue is coming from, and specifically the redevelopment agency revenue is the revenue to pay. At the November 18th redevelopment agency meeting, I presented a conservative view of our 5-year budget, fiscal 11 through fiscal 15. And in that budget, I did not include a partial payment for the City Hall project. One of the reasons why I didn't is it was a conservative budget. We made the assumption that unless something was already under construction or already on the tax rolls, we did not include it when projecting future revenue. So we made that assumption. So because of that, in that 5-year period, I didn't have revenue availability for helping making a portion of the payment. We do expect that there are going to be new projects coming online, like the recently completed Rush Tower, and to the extent that those projects do come online, whether they're projects directly supported by the project you voted on today or just private projects. The Rush Tower is a good example. It was a private project. The redevelopment agency had zero participation. They did it because of the investment that they wanted to make in their property. So to the extent that we get new investment in the redevelopment agency, that will result in new revenue coming into the redevelopment agency, and then we in turn can pledge all or a part of that to make part of the payment for the new City Hall.
Thank you very much.
Very good. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Okay.
Thank you.
And item number 7, page 2, lines 3 through 6, quote, Nevada Revised Statute 268.063 authorizes the city to sell, lease, or otherwise dispose of real property for purposes of economic development without first offering it to the public and for less than fair market value if the City Council finds by resolution that it is in the best interest of the public to do so. And, end of quote. And we just have a comment about that could be a question to ask candidates for office, I guess. Number 8. The first 9 lines of this resolution approves a whole series of things, and we didn't hear any of those discussed. On page 2, line 1 states, the city has or will simultaneously herewith adopt Bill number 2009-50 in order to finance the cost of the City Hall project through the sale of certificates of participation, or COPs. And so when you voted for that before 1 o'clock, you already had okayed that. So then going back to item 50 was not necessary. Is that true?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. And then page 2, lines 5 and 6 state, quote, city parties and developer are prepared to execute the joint approval certificate, end of quote. And that also, there were so many things that when item 8 was approved, had it been approved separately, then these things were done automatically without people maybe necessarily knowing them. Page 2, lines 10 through 23 inform you, mayor and council persons, that, quote, there have been filed with the city clerk the forms, end of quote. A total of 6, which have been dated December 17th, 2009. So that was approved too. And that's in the future. What was that about? The forms that have been filed dated December 17th, 2009.
I don't know.
It's item number 8.
Okay, I'll ask the manager's
Page 2,
office
10
to try to
through
respond
23.
to that, but we have to hear from the next speaker, please.
And I'm almost done.
Well, no, I have to have some rules here, with all due respect. Mr. Fletcher?
I wasn't prepared for the 1 minute before, Mayor.
No, 3.
I'm saying before, for the public comment before. Dean Fletcher, President, Las Vegas Firefighters. As earlier, we rose in opposition finally to this new City Hall and the project because we were always told as your employees it would never come from the general fund. When reading through all this over the Thanksgiving weekend, it's pretty clear that it's mentioned if the RDA can't pay for it, it's going to come from somewhere. And Mark Vincent, in a roundabout way, said it's going to come from the general fund. We're going to have to pay that bill. What I wanted to try to address, too, I touched on the fire stations a little bit. Councilman Ross, maybe a little bit over a year ago, gave up his funding for a new station out in the far northwest because of the stop of the focus group property. That was to help pay for 3 fire stations. We adjusted the footprints of those stations with the low cost of building. Those are going to create jobs too. Those are going to protect the citizens, faster response times. Those were put on hold at your meeting, as Councilman Anthony mentioned. Currently, what's going on, it's been in the paper. The major part is concessions for contracts. The other part is it is clear, this is a statement at the bottom from Betsy Fretwell, it is clear that we need to identify more or additional and larger reductions in force will be necessary. That's a quote, that's what it says. So you fast forward a few days to yesterday, and I want to go on record. The fire chief is an appointed position. He did not do this without direction or approval. And I'll put this in the record also. We reduced staffing. We don't have a water tender anymore. That's 3 positions. We're going to lose our EMS position when somebody's off. That position's funded by the fire initiative. The battalion chief aide position was put in for the safety of our members. That is part of the plan as of January 1st to stop staffing that position if somebody calls in sick or is on vacation. We're losing a firefighter off of the Air Resource Unit that has been there for years to provide rehab for our members, medical and all that at fires or extended incidents. Our arson bomb team, they're your bomb squad. The plan is we're only going to have 2 people instead of 3. If somebody's off, we're not backfilling a position. That's what's going on in the real world right now. In the bottom paragraph, there also are plans then if things get worse, which I've asked the question at your last presentation, what is Tier 2 and what is Tier 3? Never got that answer. Just real quick, Mayor.
Go ahead.
I think my prior speaker had a little bit more time.
Go ahead, no problem.
Units to be affected in the future, possibly. An engine 203, serving West Las Vegas. Rescue 301, downtown. Rescue 204, serving 15th and Charleston. The technical rescue team for incidents, for the citizens, for us if we need them. And the Seaburn unit for chemical, biological, radiation, nuclear, or explosives. Those are what we're looking at in the future as your firefighters. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, now I'll say this to you, Mr. Fletcher, because I have a lot of respect for you. You heard time and time again today that the City Hall project really has nothing to do with the issues as far as our day-to-day operations here, and basically anything that's going to kick in, which could affect you, would be about 5 years out. So these are two separate and independent issues, and we're always available to discuss them. I just wanted to say that to you because I don't think any of us would ever try to take away from what we're doing to stop the project if the project were to affect it, but the project does not affect it at all.
And I understand that part of your position, but we were always told nothing would ever come out of the general fund.
I appreciate that.
Absolutely, positively, and that is not true.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Hello, good evening. Is this working? No. Daniel Deegan.
No, now it's not working.
1801 Granite Avenue. Mayor and Council, good afternoon. This is way short. I'm at least as hungry as you are. I'd like to put one small voice of support in for the actions of the Council this morning in support of redevelopment of downtown. Representing Rancho Manor Neighborhood Association, which is the closest residential neighborhood to Symphony Park. We have an interest in the success of downtown. We don't want to see Las Vegas become another Detroit or Buffalo, where I come from, where people have neglected their central cities and lived in the suburbs, and what they wind up with is a city without a heart and a dead city. And I think you're moving in the right direction. It is risky, especially building office and retail space around the new City Hall. It will be a catalyst for that. I hope it'll work, especially in the commercial real estate bust that we have now. We have to look to the future and have some confidence. As Chris Kempfer might have said, Baron de Rothschild did say, the time to invest is when blood is running in the streets. And I think you're doing that now, and I certainly hope and pray that you're doing the right thing. I believe you are. As Councilwoman Tarkanian said very aptly, I think, you act like a business, and I think it will come out right. So again, congratulations, and one small neighborhood certainly supports your efforts. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Farlow.
Thank you. Todd Farlow, 240 North 9th.
Is it on? Is the mic on? Is the microphone on?
Thank you. Todd Farlow, 240 North 19th Street. The people that I've talked to are in support of this with one thing. They don't want another fiasco like that Regional Justice Center. So, Councilman Ross, tell the building trades, they got to get on the same thing. We don't want this thing going clear over budget and the stuff not working and another thing like that. Thank you.
It can't, because the agreement that we have with Forest City is that they have to bring it in at that price. The city has no further exposure.
Yeah, but that thing was years over.
I know, they built it themselves.
Yeah.
And Mr. Farlow, if you don't, I'm
Yes.
sorry, Mr. Farlow, if you don't mind, from day one, I also urged the developer of the new City Hall to make sure the elevators work, and they work right, unlike the RJC. From day one, I've been saying that.
All right. Would anyone else like to be heard at this time? All right. Seeing none, we'll move on to item number 10. Are there any members of the, let's see, this is council agency member recognition. Any members of the council who wish to speak on this?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. The Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you very much. I want to apologize again for having to rush through those items. I thought it was very important. I know that we all had other things that we would like to put on the record so that people can understand our vote. One thing I want to stress is I've always said that out of all the elected officials in the state of Nevada, I'm probably the most accessible. If people don't see me at City Hall, they know where to find me. I answer the phone at the barber shop from 6 o'clock in the morning till 5 o'clock at night. I am accessible. And I think it's important that I do respect other council members, how they voice their opinion, what they say. I just want to put on record that in all the time that we've been discussing a new City Hall, the only ones that have ever come up to me and asked me, please support new City Hall. Please support the City Hall. I have never had one person email me, call me, send a text to my office saying, don't support the City Hall. For whatever it's worth, I think it was important to me because I've always felt like I am responsive to my citizens and their needs. If they would have had a a large contingent out there opposing the City Hall, I wouldn't have voted for it. As far as our city employees, I think that, yes, maybe we as a council are taking a huge chance. But I feel like that has been mentioned a number of times before today as well as today. If in 3 years or 4 years when we have to make that first payment, if we're still in a downturn of City Hall, then it's like the mayor said, we're all going to be talking Chinese. I really feel like that we are going to be able to, again, get our foot on the ground and go forward. I know that when I was first on the Planning Commission years ago, there was a huge rhubarb about building the Stratosphere Hotel, maybe because of its height. I know that the Planning Commission I attended that night went until 5 o'clock in the morning. It was huge. People was in favor of it, people was opposing it. And again, I want to put on record, when we started this redevelopment, Steve Wynn, who has done a great job as far as developing, to me, monuments in and around the city of Las Vegas as well as the county. I remember Steve Wynn saying at one time, we need to build channels around our downtown area to get people to come down there. And there was a lot of talk about why and how come we shouldn't build those channels. We didn't get the channels when we got Fremont Experience. Is it a good thing? I was part of the old clan that used to come down here right up and down Fremont Street chasing girls and stuff years ago, going down the old Blue Onion. It was important, the tradition that we had. It was important to have that. But it got to where they wasn't doing that. We had a bad area. It was decaying. The hotels got together and they formed the Downtown Alliance that is now the Fremont Experience. And has that been successful? I deem it very successful. We've had problems with Binion's. They're threatening to close up. I can appreciate that. But again, we have put people on Fremont Street. You can go there any time of the day or any time of the night, and you see tons and tons more people there today than you could see 10, 12 years ago before we had the Fremont Experience. And again, this is something that the City Council and the Mayor has done, whether it was through the Mayor Jan Jones or whether it was through Oscar Goodman. And I want to emphasize, not one person has done it by themselves. The council, whether united or separate, we have done what we thought was the best. And I want to tell Councilman Anthony, I appreciate his stance. I know he was out campaigning to get to win the election to that seat. He had people talking to him about the new City Hall, the money we're going to spend, where it was going to come from. And I hope that we have tried to address where the money is going to come from to build the new City Hall. And I don't think that we're putting anybody or anything at risk by building a new City Hall at this time. I think it's important that we do go forward. I've always said my dad belonged to the CCC camps over in Moab, Utah, and that was the government trying to help people go to work. Our federal government is trying to create jobs through the stimulus programs. To me, they could have gave each one of us $1 million and still saved money out of the $1 trillion they spent. We could have had a huge impact on what we're doing, where we're going. And again, Mayor, I wanted to make sure that I got to say those things I wanted to say. This is just a portion of what I wanted to put on record before I cast my vote for the new City Hall. And again, I appreciate those comments made by the City Council members as well as yourself, Mayor. I think it's important that people understand how we feel and why we feel the way we do. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And because I'm your buddy, I want the record to reflect that when you were chasing those girls on Fremont Street, you were single.
Yes, I was.
Okay, Councilman Barlow, did you want to say something at this time?
I'll wait for the sake of time. For the sake of time, Mayor, I'm hungry.
Okay. Anybody else want to say anything up here? All right, folks. I'm looking at my watch. Let's try to be back here at 2:20. 2:20. Let's try. Yeah, I know it's rough, but we'll try our best to be back at 2:20. So we're in recess until 2:20.
No, this one goes for an adjournment.
Okay. The special council session between the
I move for adjournment, Your Honor.
The City Council and redevelopment There's a motion for adjournment, and that motion passes. Do we have to vote? Good.